Hello and welcome to Where You Lead, a podcast where we, a real-life mother and daughter duo, rewatch Gilmore Girls and discuss the misadventures of fictional mother and daughter duo Lorelai and Rory Gilmore. I am Tessa Dare, a writer and the author of the paranormal mystery series The Karanzan Chronicles, and Beth's daughter.
And I'm Beth, Tessa's mom and fellow culture critic, writer, fan of the Gilmore Girls. We have been joined at the hip, much as Lorelai and Rory are, for just a little over 3 decades. And we may on occasion bring other cultural references into our discussion. I have had enough coffee for today. No more coffee for me. But I should warn listeners that I may slip up and kind of like Lorelai might and call Tess by her birth name because that's the name that I gave her. But my goal is to follow her lead.
Every week, we will start off with a synopsis of the episode along with the date it aired before heading into our discussion. So Beth is done with coffee. I am not done with coffee today. I am on my second cup of coffee, and I'm drinking it in my very pretty, fancy blue goblet that my mommy got me for my birthday, Christmas. I don't remember when you got this for me.
I don't remember, but it's cold coffee then.
Yeah, it's cold coffee. Well, it's hot outside. I drink cold coffee when it's hot.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
Like most normal humans.
I think this was a housewarming gift or something, right?
Oh yeah. Right after you moved in, I think. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. You got me this lovely set of blue goblets, and that is what I am drinking my coffee out of. So.
Okay.
All right.
Well, today's episode is episode 4 from season 1. It's titled "The Deer Hunters."
Yes.
Which is a takeoff on a movie from the 70s called The Deer Hunter.
Yes. Also,
I think. Although I'm not. We'll have to discuss the title later on.
Yeah.
But anyway, it originally aired October 26, 2000. Tess will give you the synopsis.
Yes, and we should talk about meaning of the title at the end of the episode because
okay,
I think that's when it comes into play.
That's when it comes in.
Yeah. So okay. The basic summary for this episode is we actually start off with a scene of back to school shopping, but the instigating incident of the episode is Rory gets a bad grade at Chilton and proceeds to freak out. There's also a B plot where Suki is having a kind of similar freak out, although her reasons are, I guess you could argue that they're more personal in some ways, but
it's
Suki
still great though.
Yes, she got a grade.
I guess she didn't get an A+.
Yes, she got an A- and she's troubled over the minus. Rory, however, got a D. Paris really rubs it in for her. And there's another test coming up, and so she spends a lot of the episode getting ready for that test, only for things to go wrong at the last minute. All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty details. So we do our opening scene. Our cold open for the episode is back to school shopping. I have watched this scene a couple of times now, and every time I'm trying to figure out if they're at Dozie's Market. I don't think so, because the market never looks like that on the inside, but they might be using the same set, because I think you can kind of see a part of the Dozie's Market spray paint on one of the windows, like the decal on the outside. This is totally not important.
It could be. Yeah. It could be there's another section of the market that we ordinarily don't see that has school supply, or because it's the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not, because she enters. She enters Chilton late in the school year, so they wouldn't have a special section just for for that.
It does look like it's a special section for that, which is kind of our first weird time anachronism of the episode. There's going to be another one that we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, yet again, the Gilmore Girls appears to exist in a world outside of time, or where weddings happen in the middle of the week.
And this particular opening I loved, though, because it was all about the somber versus silly, and their personalities just really come out in this scene. You know, Rory is pretty somber. I mean, she can be silly, but her natural personality is more subdued, more calm. In fact, that comes up later in that, and maybe that's the point they're making, because she is not quite stoic, but she has she just has a lot of patience. She's calm. Her mother is more seat of the pants,
Festive.
risk taker. Yeah, and but Rory has a long fuse.
Yes.
I mean, that's a really important point to make at the beginning of this episode. She has a long fuse. Her mother does not. Anyway, so that kind of comes out, that contrast in this opening scene where she's making fun of her and trying to get her to get the colorful Post-its, the colorful legal pads.
Yes.
So
what did she say? The erasers are on lithium or something?
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene. And yeah, Rory is more serious than Lorelai, especially when it comes to her own schoolwork, and that is important in this episode. And that comes up too. Yeah. And in fact, the very next scene maybe kind of underlines that point. The next scene is Rory getting off the bus to go to school, only she has to get off the bus several times because she keeps having to go back to grab more of her bags.
Why does she have so much stuff?
I don't know.
She has like a gym bag packed to the gills, and then she's got a backpack, and then she's something else. There's three. She goes back on. Yeah. She's three trips she makes, and I don't understand why anybody needs to carry that much stuff to school.
I don't
In fact,
know.
I wrote it in my notes. Why does she have so much stuff?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's partly just a visual gag. I think it's,
it is.
Kind of a metaphor for how much work she's doing.
And it reinforces how serious she is.
Yeah.
She is really prepared.
Yeah.
She didn't leave anything at home.
And unfortunately, right after that is when she walks into the classroom, or when she goes to class and learns that she has gotten a D. The teacher is a new character named Max Medina. And he has a pretty good line about how what is it? It says, look at the large red circles around various parts of your paper as friendly reminders that to err is human, and that here at Chilton we try to beat that humanity right out of you.
And it's true.
It's true.
It's exactly what they do, and that is, there's a little bit, quite a bit of foreshadowing in this scene actually, because he says that, and then he talks about about this test that's coming up and how there are no makeups. That's foreshadowing. It's not, this is at the end, when we get to the end, this is what I want to talk about, is why is this important? Why is it important to prepare these students for not, you're taking the joy out of it for them. So, and that's kind of what his statement means, we're going to beat the humanity out of you. Yeah. He says it sarcastically, but it's true.
And I think there is, Chilton is definitely an extreme example intentionally, because Chilton is not just about education, but it's also kind of about that, like, upper class Northeastern mentality of, like, perfection or else. But I really like that line, and I do think that to an extent it can be applied to a lot of the way that we do schooling, at least in America. I mean, maybe this is not the right place to go into my treatise on education, but it's something interesting to think about. When you get a paper back and there's a lot of, like, red marks on it, some of that is good and some of that teaches you, how you've made errors, but because
it should be constructive.
And because teachers are also human, you might on occasion encounter a teacher who is not so much trying to educate you as trying to fit you into a particular mold, and sometimes some of the feedback that you're going to get back on papers is going to be more about that teacher's preference than it is about any kind of objective standard. And I think...
But that's kind of contradictory in what we see in this teacher. His big line in this scene is, we're going to beat the humanity right out of you, and yet he gives her a D when he knows very well that we're into the 4th episode here. She's been at this school a week, 2 weeks, and she's behind. She started this semester late. She's behind on the reading. She had a lot of catching up to do. And first of all, he never says anything about that. He doesn't say it on the paper. And what's her name? Paris, who just rubs it in for 30 seconds or more, and calls her names. It's like, you know that she is new to this school. But Paris is so competitive and so convinced that she has to be number one. And for some reason, she senses in Rory a true competitor with her for spot number one. And I'm not sure why she senses that, but she senses it. And she's right to sense it because Rory is smarter than all the other girls except Paris. So, and we'll find that out as time goes on. But they're just like beating her down from the moment she walks in the door 2 weeks before.
And I mean, I feel like the implication, at least, is that Chilton is fine with them doing that, if not encourages them to do that.
Right.
You know, Chilton has...
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah. Yes.
Chilton has set this system up so that it's a zero-sum game for everybody, and Paris is playing that game the way she has been taught to play. But yeah, I mean, I do think that Max in this episode is a little bit of a contradiction, and maybe part of that is just that they needed to introduce him somehow, and the episode needs to have something interesting going on, so it can't just all be candy and flowers. But I think we're supposed to take that he is one of the nicer, more caring teachers at the school, and that he really does want Rory to do well, but he is hamstrung by the school's policies. And we don't, I feel like we don't really get that deeper into it, but I feel like that is, I don't know, that's an interesting commentary, and it definitely makes me think maybe this school should rethink how it does things if the nice teacher feels like they are hamstrung by the school's policies, you know?
Yes, yeah. And I think also this opening set of scenes is trying to reinforce that this is an alien landscape for Rory. You know, they finished this difficult scene with that asshole whose name I can never remember coming up to her and calling her Mary.
Oh.
And we all know what the Mary name is now. What is his name?
Tristan.
You know, he's, oh God, of course it is. Of course it's Tristan. So, and you know, and that scene goes on, you know, and you could just see her, and it's too much.
It's too much.
You know, first she gets the D, then Paris hits her over the head with all these insults, and then Tristan
calls her Mary.
Acts like calls her Mary, which is, you want to do a rehash on that? I know it's a bad thing, but I can't remember why it was bad.
I mean, it's like a combo. It's covering all bases. They start off by calling her Mary, and you can either be like Mary Magdalene and then you're a whore, or you can be like the Virgin Mary and then you're a goody two shoes.
Yeah,
and I think in Rory's case,
and
it's
just the fact
latter.
that he's insisting on not learning her name. He knows her name, but he won't use it because it's a way of, you know, putting her in her place.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not going to learn your name. I'm going to call you what I want to call you.
Yeah.
So it's that I actually rewatched this the other night when I was really tired, and I wrote down scene with asshole. I really hate him. And
Tristan is one of the worst characters.
He's the worst. He is worst. I mean, you know, Paris redeems herself many times over later on in the series, and we come to love her. Yeah. But boy, we never love Tristan. We just want somebody to shoot him.
Yeah.
You know, if there was
he gets more development later on, but I do agree he's never really likable. He's never really likable. But I do think he's kind of a good, like, I do think that he's, like, when I say he's a bad character, I mean he, like, sucks to watch, but I do think that he is a representation of a very real type of boy who is at these schools.
Absolutely.
Who uses their kind of privilege, essentially, to put other people in their place, often from a... Yeah. I mean, it's sexual harassment. What he's doing to her is
absolutely
is coded sexual harassment, basically.
It's very much. He's also a counterpoint to Rory.
Yes.
Because there is not a kinder soul, really, on the planet. I mean, Rory is the embodiment of kindness and inclusion and welcoming. She's just this open person who does not assume anything bad about people, and yet she is getting mistreated by the teacher, by Paris, and by Tristan. It's a very difficult opening to watch. It was for me anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you definitely feel like you're right in it with Rory, and none of this is her fault, and yet she keeps getting pooped on, basically. And
we'll come back to that towards the end of the scene, or the end of the episode. where she makes a decision, and I just had tears streaming down my face because she's such a strong character.
Yeah.
So this is the first evidence we get in this episode of what a strong personality she is, what a strong young woman she is. So anyway, so the next scene is in the restaurant.
Yes, and we've got
in the inn.
Yeah, in the inn, and we've got Drella and Michelle sniping at each other again. And I think I didn't make a specific note, but at some point Lorelai walks by Drella, and apparently she's playing. Oh, I've totally blacked out what it was.
Pearl Jam. No.
I don't think it's Pearl Jam. It's like Metallica. I think it was Metallica.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's Metallica. It's something. But
I
anyway,
should have written it down.
So then I should have written it down. And then she gives her a list of things she can play, and she includes in that list Queen and Steely Dan. And I'm like, where is she getting this list?
I'm guessing these are things that Drella has played before.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But why? My question is, I guess, why is Drella playing Steely Dan and Queen, and then everything else was like, hardcore metal.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
On a harp, by the way, on a harp. She is playing this. Harp. Steely Dan works for me on a harp, but I can't even hear the other stuff on a harp. I love Drella.
All right, so then we get to what I guess is kind of the... Oh, wait, it's Black Sabbath. I did write it down. It was Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. Yes. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Black Sabbath and Steely Dan.
Okay, so... but then we do get what I think qualifies as the B plot of this episode, which is Suki and the review. Lorelai picks up a magazine which appears to be called 4-Star Dining, and it has a review of the inn's restaurant. And Lorelai reads it out to Suki, who's very anxious about it. And it's a very good review. It's overall a glowing review. However, he wasn't wowed by the risotto, which
it was fine.
Yes,
he said it was fine. Fine.
Yes,
it was fine.
It was fine.
A fine risotto,
which devastates Suki. She, of course, immediately blacks out everything else that's good in the review and focuses,
which is pretty great.
Yeah,
it's a pretty great review.
It's a great review, but she's devastated by it. And Rory actually shows up during this scene, also devastated, but Lorelai kind of doesn't notice or doesn't pick up on what's going on.
Nobody does. Everybody is focused on Suki, who is the drama queen in any scene she's in.
Well, and because they were in the middle of reading the review, so that's what's got their focus.
Yeah, that's true.
And her reaction is weird. It's not just that it's dramatic, it's that she should be overjoyed by this review, and instead she's devastated by it. So nobody quite picks up that Rory is also having a very bad day.
The next scene is homework.
Yeah, the next scene is homework, which is kind of a funny reversal of the normal parent-child dynamic.
Yes. Put that homework away and let's go get some ice cream.
Yes. Lorelai is kind of acting like a little kid who cannot focus on any one thing and just wants to go get ice cream.
And she says she's hungry, and every time she says something, Rory talks to her like she's the parent. You're right. Yep. It's a reversal. At one point she says, "There's pizza. Go get the pizza."
And then Lorelai's like, "It's cold, so warm it up."
It's not as good. And Rory, what I have in my notes is Lorelai needs to get a life now that Rory has a more serious and busy life.
Yeah.
And this is going to keep happening. Yeah. Lorelai's going to have to. Her whole world has been her daughter for 16 years, and a career, and she does have friends, but they come home at night and they have a routine. Yeah. Rory would get through her homework probably very quickly because it was public school and it was a lot easier. And then they'd watch TV or watch a movie and eat popcorn. And she doesn't have that kind of time now. And I remember this from when you started at Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. Shout out to Thomas Jefferson. And of course, a lot of times you would come home and we'd have dinner and we'd watch some kind of TV, and then you would start your homework at 10 o'clock, which was, always bothering because you'd be awake until 1 or 2 o'clock. But you did spend 3 or 4 hours every night on homework because prep schools, that's what is required.
Also,
and
to be
it's
fair,
serious.
Just to make me sound a little less terrible, the way that TJ was set up was we had a lot of extra time in the afternoon to work on our homework. You didn't come and pick me up until 5 p.m. We were supposed to be on campus until 5 p.m. and much of that time was free time, and I usually did spend that time studying. So usually
you did, yeah.
I would be doing homework in the afternoon. I would try to get a couple of my subjects done, and then I would have some left in the evening. And yes, I would often start it way too late. But I had to watch the OC every Thursday, and that was just not negotiable.
There were a few other shows too, yeah. But yeah, so you would start, and I remember one time telling people, she starts her homework at 10 o'clock at night, but I think by 12 or 1 you were in bed, and then you were literally rolling out of bed 15 minutes before we left the house. Yep. Simon and I would have been up for an hour, but we let you sleep as long as you could.
I remember you used to bring me veggie sausages in a bowl to my bed, and I would eat them and go back to sleep.
Yeah. So you would sleep in and then pull up dirty clothes usually and throw them.
I mean, I only had so many dress pants and dress shirts.
We didn't have money for we didn't have a budget for it. And that's another thing too. When you go to prep school, now I think Rory, her school has uniforms. And we had that whole conversation in the first episode. But your school didn't require uniforms, but you did have to dress a certain way.
Yes.
And the boys had to wear. They always had to wear jackets, but they had to wear ties.
They always had
dress
to wear
shirts.
ties. I think they had to either wear a jacket or a sweater.
Okay,
it was actually kind of it. I can't speak to the present day. I think they have actually relaxed the dress code a fair bit. But at the time, it was kind of an ongoing joke that the dress code was strict for everybody, but it was way worse for the boys. The boys were, I think, not allowed to wear shorts. They had to wear long dress pants. They had to wear belts that were done properly. Their shirts had to be tucked in, and they had to be wearing ties, and they had to either wear a jacket or a sweater. Girls had to dress nicely, but it wasn't quite the same, in part because I mean, women tend to have more options in general, but I usually
no patch pockets.
No patch pockets.
Have patch pockets.
I got in trouble one time because I wore one of your pairs of pants to school, not realizing the patch pockets rule.
In the very early days, it was I think the first couple months.
And I'm realizing anyone listening to this might not understand what we're talking about because I didn't.
What's a patch pocket?
I didn't know the term patch pocket before I went to TJ.
I didn't either.
So if you're looking at a pair of pants and it has pockets on it, it's either going to be a slit pocket where all you see is the top slit, or it's going to be a patch that has been sewn on top. Jeans on the back tend to have patch pockets, and that is what was not allowed. Also, in general, no one was allowed to wear jeans, period.
No. But you could wear pants.
You could wear other pants, but not if they had patch pockets sewn on. So I wore one of your pair of corduroy pants and got in trouble. I mean, I wore them because this was when I didn't have enough clothes, really, to get through the week.
Right.
So I wore
You never did, really.
I wore a pair of your pants, assuming it would be fine, and got in trouble for the patch pocket, and I didn't have any pants to change into, so I believe I got 12 demerits for that.
So the next scene is in Kim's store.
Yes. Yeah, Rory goes to Kim's Antiques, and she and Lane have to play Marco Polo to find each other. Lane is eating a rice cake, which I do just want to say, I love rice cakes, but I don't eat them plain. I eat, the flavored kind.
Yeah, and the answer that she gave when Rory asked her, she said, what is that? She said 20 calories.
I think 12.
She didn't even, 12 calories. She didn't even tell her it was a rice cake. She just said it was. And then, of course, Rory has a candy bar for her, which they have to hide from. Is it Miss Kim or is it Kim? It's just Kim, right?
Mrs. Kim.
Mrs. Kim. So she has to hide that from her. But the frustrating thing about this scene is they have to move 3 times. Every time they sit down at a table, Mrs. Kim walks up to them and says, that table's sold, move. So, because it's an antique store.
Yep.
And it's a hoarder's antique store because they literally cannot find each other.
Yeah.
Anytime they're in that store, it's the same running gag.
And Lane, at the end of the scene, says something like, I hate sales. So I think the implication is supposed to be that they're having a sale right now, so it's worse than normal. But also, Mrs. Kim does actually see the Snickers, and then Rory quickly grabs it and claims that it's hers. And I don't remember exactly what...
Takes a bite.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what Mrs. Kim says, but it's something like, it's chocolate-covered death, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The other main thing that happens is Lane mentions that Dean has asked about Rory.
Mm-hmm.
And Lane told her that she's going to the smart person school.
And they have a conversation about how smart Rory is. Rory doesn't feel smart at this point because she got a D.
Yes.
She's not feeling it.
Yeah.
She's not feeling smart.
Feeling pretty down.
So then they go, but then I have in my notes that the next scene is the harpist with the Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I think
actually
so.
did write Black Sabbath down.
Yeah, this is actually where it comes up in my notes. I think
that's where that scene comes in. But then
earlier.
So let's skip to the next one because we've already talked about that one. In the kitchen with Suki depressed.
Yes, yeah. So Suki's depressed. Lorelai does try to tell Suki about how crazy Chilton is, because she has to go to yet another parent-teacher conference, and she references how, like, the one last week everyone got into a fight about scrunchies.
I thought she was making that up, that she was just teasing. But when she goes to...
But then it comes up later, yeah.
It comes up at this actually did happen.
Yeah, it does sound like it's a joke, but it turns out later that she was being quite serious. But Suki is, like, barely able to pay attention because she's so depressed about the review.
It's not unusual for Suki, let me just point out.
Yes.
We love her to death, but she is very self-absorbed.
Yes.
Throughout the series.
And at this point, we learned that Suki apparently saved her own mother's life with the risotto. She apparently they had gotten some sort of diagnosis, and her mother was supposed to die. But she gave her the risotto.
She lived for 3 years.
And the risotto brought her back to life. And apparently this story is pretty well known because Jackson shows up and hears that she got a bad review for the risotto, and he calls it, like, the magic life-saving risotto.
Yes.
All right, and then we get to the parent-teacher meeting, which... This parent-teacher meeting is fascinating. So Lorelai shows up late because I think what happened is she ran over a pothole and spilled coffee all over herself and then had to change her shirt. And my first big...
And she puts on a B-52 shirt.
Yes.
Music is a constant theme in this show.
It is, yeah. But yeah, so she comes in a bit late. The other parents are clearly a bit disdainful of her.
But they're disdainful because she interrupted their pseudo-intellectual discussion of the curriculum in this class. It's like, people, shut up. Let the teacher talk. Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. I would even say that calling it pseudo-intellectual is almost giving them too much credit.
Too much credit.
They're, like, literally talking about bribing the person who gives the test. Like, they're telling him that they don't want him to teach Marlo because they don't think that Marlo will show up on the AP test, and all they care about is the test. And the teacher makes a joke about bribing the test giver, and the parents take it seriously. And immediately wonder if that's an option, which I think, like, at the time we didn't know how real that was.
We thought that was funny,
But nowadays we are living in a post-college admissions scandal world. And I will say, as someone who went to private school, that's absolutely a freaking real thing. I absolutely knew students in college whose resumes were padded. And when I was in college, I remember reading about, and I remember this because I considered doing it, reading about students who made money writing papers for other students. And made a lot of money. Like,
made good money.
I read some sort of, like, it was like a blog post by someone who said that they made $80,000 a year writing papers for other students, and I think that's only gone up.
I could actually get work doing that.
Yeah.
And they advertise without any chagrin, without, I mean, they just, because they code it in Word and saying, oh, I need somebody to help me write my paper and to edit it for me. Tutoring, yeah. But we know what it is.
Yeah, no, it's shameless.
But here's a question I have about that scene, though. Because they're talking about the AP test. But then and maybe it's when they take a break, and Lorelai and the teacher are talking on the side, and she says something about the SAT test is coming up on a Saturday.
Let's see.
So they switched from the AP test. It's like, do they not know that AP test and SAT test? First of all, AP tests don't happen in the fall. They happen in the spring.
Exactly. So that was my number one issue, was like, there is no way, because Max says, like, there's an AP test next month, and I was like, no, there's not. The AP
there's
test,
an SAT test.
The SAT and the PSAT get are held like multiple
During the
times a
fall.
year, but the AP tests only happen in late spring.
Yep, absolutely. End of the school year. Because you have so much curriculum you have to get in before they can take the test. So
And
it's like usually like end of April.
Yeah.
Oh, it depends on the school year now. It was end of April when I was in school. But for you, it might have been a little... Well, no, it was the same for you because your school year was longer.
April, May. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we took them April, May. But yeah, well, and there's another difference too, which is that as far as I know, you cannot retake the AP test. You take it once and that's your score.
That's it.
The SAT test you can take over and over again.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think a lot of...
Now, the PSAT test only once.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Because that is actually a test that qualifies you for National Merit Scholarship.
Yeah.
So it's a one-time thing.
But I believe at my school, we actually had to take the SAT twice. I think we took it once late junior year and then again early senior year.
I think you may have taken it 3 times because I think you took it as a
PSAT.
Prep.
Oh yeah, I think we also
you
did
took it as a prep for the
test,
PSAT. Yeah, because you can't take the PSAT twice, so you prepped it by taking. Now it might have not been. I don't remember. No, I think you did. Your sophomore year, you guys took an SAT test to prep for the PSAT.
I think so. Yeah, I think we did do a practice test that didn't count, and then we took the actual PSAT. But I think we took the official SAT in a manner that counted twice. I think we did extra. I think we did another practice in between, at least one, if not more than one. But then we actually sat for the test officially twice.
Yeah,
because I think there was like a very specific reason for it. It was like typically if you take it twice, your score can improve by about 100 points, but usually it never improves.
Usually not more than that. Yeah.
So SAT advice from me: take the SAT at least twice, but probably no more than that.
Yep.
But anyway, my first issue with this scene was like, they're talking about the AP test. There's no way this is accurate. Like, the AP test doesn't happen in the fall.
So are we supposed to think that these people who create and write and produce these kind of TV shows never went to college, never took an AP test, don't have kids who went to college, they don't understand or they don't know when AP tests happen? Doesn't everybody know that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's hard to say, or if they're just assuming that like your average person either isn't gonna know or isn't gonna notice what tests we're talking about. I don't know how common it is to take AP tests now. I know when I was in high school, people who went to public school didn't necessarily take AP tests. At my school, everyone had to take the AP test. It was absolutely required.
It was required, yeah.
Yeah. All of our classes, junior and senior year, all of them were AP classes.
Well, now at the public school in the school district where we lived, your brother had the option to take AP tests. He had 2 or 3 AP classes. He did not want to take the tests in those classes, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He did perfectly fine in the test, had no interest in taking the AP tests, and that was fine because they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And which I didn't realize until you were in high school, because when I went to high school, my AP tests were paid for by the school district. We did not have to pay for them. I didn't have any idea that, I mean, that's how forward thinking our school district was. Because I've talked to other people my age about this, and they're like, oh no, we had to pay for AP tests, but we didn't. That was an unusual situation that I didn't learn about until you were a high school student. And when Simon was, when he decided not to take the test, I was like, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, I guess when the writers of this episode were in high school, if it was relatively rare to take AP tests, so maybe they just figured most people wouldn't know about it, or if they just figured that no one's going to be paying as close attention to the detail as you and I currently.
As you and I are, yes. Because we're all about the detail.
All right, so there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about here, which is the classism showing its ugly head again. Lorelai, I don't even remember what specific comment she says that sets them off. Oh, no, I remember. She says something about maybe wanting to come for the test and see what all the excitement is about, and the other parents poo-poo her, and one of them specifically insults her by saying that her daughter must be one of the scholarship students in this very, denigrating tone.
Well, and that happens with Lorelai a lot,
Yes.
because some of these things she doesn't know about. She dropped out of high school at 16. And what they don't know is that she comes from a wealthy family.
Yeah.
So education and wealth don't always, I mean, she goes back to school.
Yeah.
She wants to go back to college. And I think she is working on her business degree.
Yeah.
But she didn't do it at the time where most people do it. She didn't go to Harvard. And that's something that's going to come up in a minute, too. So go ahead and finish with this scene.
Also, I mean, I think that woman is just, like, wildly off base. Like, I don't even think it's Lorelai's lack of education that is why she wants to do this. It's just that she's, like, actually a more supportive parent than any of these people.
Yes.
Like, these parents just want to pay their kids' way into school, whereas Lorelai wants to be there with her daughter for the exciting moments. That's, like, literally why she wants to see the test, is because it's an exciting moment.
I do think, too, that she wants to share the excitement of that moment, because her daughter's getting ready to go to college. Exactly. That's what all this is about. And she's excited about that because she didn't get to finish high school, much less go to college.
Yes.
And all these other people in the room, all of the parents and the teacher have all gone to college. To them, it's a standard thing. It's what everybody does.
Yeah.
But to Lorelai, even though she comes from this wealthy background, it is not. It's new and exciting, and she's excited. But you know what? Here's the thing. I was excited for you. I didn't want to be in the room when you took the test.
It's a long test.
It's a long test, and it would be distracting, and it's illegal. I mean, not illegal, but they're not going to let you in the room. Against the rules. And that's the other thing she didn't know. It's the proctors wouldn't let you in the room anyway. But it was exciting for me to see you go through this process. I share in that with Lorelai.
Yeah.
It was very exciting. I am not so hardened that this wasn't exciting to me. Because, let's remember, I was first generation college kid. You're second generation. That's far removed from what a lot of those people in this meeting have experienced.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and I think that's the other side to it too, is that for Lorelai and for Rory, they have a very idealistic idea about what they want Rory's future to be, and it's kind of a romantic idea, but it's also about, their shared passions and the life that they want Rory to live, whereas for these parents, it's just sort of expected that their kids are going to go to these highfalutin schools.
And be successful.
Yeah, and that they're going to find ways to, bribe the test giver, and, they're just, it's not really the same kind of idealism and excitement and enjoyment of learning. It's more about the economic side and just the expectation that you're rich and you're going to stay rich and you're going to do the things that you have to do to stay rich, and that means going to this school and then going to X college.
Yep.
And so I guess to that extent, that lady is right, that Lorelai is more like a quote-unquote scholarship student, in that she still has that excitement for learning, and it's not just a rote expectation.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But there's also a certain mentality. When I was in college, I remember taking classes that I really loved and realizing at some point that I was not on a career path, career path, that I was just taking classes about topics that I wanted to learn about. And at one point it occurred to me, I am going to college to learn. I'm not going to college to get a job. That's very different from what a lot of people do. A lot of people go to college to get a job. Yeah. Well, I wasn't able to get a job right after college. I had to, have a bunch of crappy jobs for a long time. And people I knew who did the other way had jobs waiting for them the day after graduation.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I don't think either way is wrong or right. It's just personalities and what you want out of life. So, but this kind of the D discussion she has with the teacher when she realizes at the end, they take a break. They're on the break.
Yes.
And he tells her, but he says, "I'm so sorry. Is she okay?" And Lorelai doesn't know, because she hasn't given Rory a chance. Before, she didn't pick up on Rory's mood enough to ask her what's wrong. Yeah. And the teacher tells her that she got the D, and Lorelai leaves the room, drives home, because she realizes, oh my God, my overachieving daughter got a D. Yeah. And I didn't know this. She's probably been depressed. Yeah. There's probably all kinds of things going on with her. And then they do have a discussion about how, and I'm talking about this because I want to make a point, but learning how to ride a bike. Yeah. When it took her so long, it took Rory so long to learn how to ride a bike. Was it 7 months, I think?
4. It was 4.
4 months, yeah. So it took her a long time. She's a perfectionist. She doesn't like to fail. Yeah. Remind you of anyone?
Yes.
You. So, Remind me, right?
Yes.
Remind me if anyone. I got lots of stories that we won't get into, but my daughter is just like Rory in this regard. You don't like to fail. So when I'm watching this scene, and it's funny because I've watched this episode twice now, took the exact same notes. Sarah doesn't like to fail either. Rory, she's really depressed because she feels like she's failed and she's not ready to give up though. And we'll get to that again in a little bit. But then, do you have anything else to say on this scene?
Let's see. I guess I would just mention that apparently Max is really bad at making coffee, or he has been given bad tools to do so. Lorelai still can't stop drinking the coffee, but it sucks. Mm-hmm. And she makes a reference that Max made it. I will say, based on where they are, I think it's probably one of those like big coffee makers that's meant to just like churn out a bunch at once, and that coffee is never very good.
It's probably been sitting there for hours.
And yeah, it's probably been sitting there for a while, and I'm not totally convinced that Max is the one who made it. But yeah, the coffee's bad. But also, you can kind of start to tell in this scene that Max is a little interested in Lorelai.
Oh, of course. Some of my other notes say every man she comes into contact with falls in love with her, except of course the headmaster of the school, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But every man. She's gorgeous. Yeah, she's beautiful.
She's beautiful. She's fun.
She's funny.
Engaging. Yeah. But yeah, so he's definitely a little bit into her, and you can tell in this scene. So that's it for that scene, and then we get another Luke's Diner scene. The Luke's Diner scene of the episode. It's not that important, but I do just want to go over the dialogue between Rory and Luke because it's cute. Luke brings her a pie because she's studying at the diner, and she tosses a pencil in frustration, and so he brings her over a piece of pie and says, "Violent pencil tossing signals a need for pie," and she responds, "What if I'd thrown a pen?" And he says, "I would have brought you a trout." And she says, "What?" And he goes, "I don't make the rules, I just carry them out." So, and that's our Luke for the episode. Not really important, but
that's cute.
But Lorelai shows up and sees that Rory is eating a piece of pie and not dinner, and sees this as further proof that Rory is in a bad place. And then they finally talk about the D. And that's when they talk about the bike.
You don't fail. You never fail.
So then we get, after that, we go back to school, and we get another scene with Paris, which
Paris. This is so hard.
It's tough, but I will say I appreciate Paris's style. She quotes a Shakespeare sonnet.
116, by the way.
116.
My favorite Shakespearean, actually everybody's favorite. It's the one that, when you hear a sonnet, it's the one that they always say, "Love is not love, which alters when alteration finds."
Yes.
So it's the most famous sonnet. It's beautiful. Doesn't mean exactly what people think it means.
Yeah.
But it's still very beautiful.
But yeah, it's beautiful, and
she recites it to behind her.
It's a power
speaking
move.
Into her ear.
Yeah. It's a power move. She's reciting it from memory to just kind of rub in the fact that Paris already knows she's going to do well on this test, and Rory doesn't, and she is delighting in that fact. And she ends it with, "You're going down."
We do not love Paris yet.
I love her a little bit.
Do you?
But she's tough in this episode. It's tough to like her in this episode. I guess I would say in this episode I love her, but I don't like her. Like I
appreciate Paris.
Yes.
I know that she's smart,
and I can see in everything that she does in this episode to torture Rory. It's all insecurity, you know? You can just kind of see it. It's all insecurity. She's delighting in having the drop on Rory and hoping that maybe if she grinds her down, she'll remain on top. But you can kind of see that the reason she's doing that is because she sees Rory as a threat.
And this is also foreshadowing for the big scene that comes at the end of the episode. So, because it's all kind of leading up to this. All these people seem to be out to put Rory in her place.
Yes. to
and
grind
this is
her
one
down.
of those ways
Yeah.
to grind her down.
For sure. Okay, and then we get another scene of Suki going crazy in the kitchen, checking to make sure we're getting everything in order. Okay, so yeah, Suki is basically convinced that something went wrong that wasn't the risotto, and that's why the food critic didn't love the risotto, and so she's trying to figure out what it might have been by like asking questions about what happened that night, trying to figure out what night he came.
Trying to figure out when he came, who waited on him, what wines were served with the food, and that is eventually the clue that she reaches, that they served a sweet wine, a German...
It's a Riesling.
It's
not quite yet, but yeah, in the next scene, she finally figures out that he had a Riesling with the risotto, and I think Lorelai says that he might as well have been drinking, like, gasoline or something. I can't remember what it was, but it's apparently, for whatever reason, a Riesling completely ruins the flavor of the risotto.
It's not the right pairing.
It's not the right pairing, yes indeed. Okay, so then we get a scene of Lorelai and Rory studying late into the night, which this is another minor issue that I have, and this is not specific to this show. I have seen a lot of television shows do this, where they act like English tests are the same thing as history tests. Like, I don't think...
Thank you. I thought the same thing. Is she just memorizing facts here? She's
memorizing dates.
What year was this play written in?
Yeah, dates.
Excuse me?
Like, I mean, I remember, like, taking English tests where you'd have to, like, know a little bit about the era, but I think it was extremely rare to have to list off... Like, I never had a test, and I went to a school where we did 2 Shakespeare plays a year, every single year, at a minimum, if not more. I never had to list off when Shakespeare was born, the exact date each play came out, the exact date he wrote a sonnet. That never came up in an English class. English is not a date memorization class.
No, it's not. Except for how it relates to... I mean, there are some exceptions to that. So when he was writing these plays, what was the history that was happening? Yeah. Because he wrote about it. He wrote about Elizabeth. He wrote about the history that was happening around him. So as it relates to current events, then maybe. But to know what year he was born, and actually we don't know what year he was born. Yeah. So... to put some trivia out there, we don't know.
I mean,
we know he's born in April. We think he was born in April.
With some texts, you do want to know a little bit about the history for sure. It's more the date memorization that gets to me. I mean, I think in my recollection, the text that for us was given the most historical context was The Inferno by Dante, because so much of that full
of stuff. But the only thing memory work you did was actually memorizing
the poems.
The poems or the speeches, you had to memorize. That's the only memory work, and that's not easy to do. And I love that about Thomas Jefferson, that they did that, because memory work we had to do memory work in grade school, and then I never had to do it again. And I really think that's why I don't retain stuff at this point in life. And I almost feel like I should go back and start doing memory work again. It's really good for your brain, I think the teachers at Thomas Jefferson got that. Plus, you've got this beautiful poetry in your mind for the rest of your life. Yeah. So it's a brilliant thing to do, but it's really the only memorization you do when it comes to Shakespeare.
Yeah. Also,
that was a problem.
At TJ, I would say 95 to 98% of the time when we did memory work, we didn't write it down. We had to recite it in front of the class. Because part of the reason that we were doing the memory work was it was kind of a training for being able to do public speaking.
Oh, isn't that how everybody does it?
I mean, that's how I did it, I don't know how anyone does it, but Rory's doing this for a written test.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're right. The only time I did memory work in high school, and it was Shakespeare, it was Hamlet, we had to do it out loud. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't... Yeah. You can... Because if you can write it down, you can sit there and think about it for a minute. But when you do spoken memory work, you not only memorize it and speak it, you're supposed to give it feeling and an emphasis and accentuate the right words. So it's almost like acting.
But I don't know. But this is not specific to Gilmore Girls. I've seen multiple shows for teenagers where
it's easy. It's an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's because it's much harder to visually show someone writing an essay.
Well, and if she's quizzing her and stuff, because they stay up really late into the night. Let's prep the scene a little bit. They stay up late into the night, and with Lorelai prepping Rory and asking her what's the answer to this one, what's the answer to that, and presumably she's doing it off of a cheat sheet. I mean, off of a study sheet that the teacher has given them. Or
that Rory herself has written.
Or that Rory has, but she knew what to put into it. So she's prepping her, and to prep for a real test like this, you would want to go over the things that happen, the action that happens in the novel or the play or whatever, make a cheat sheet for yourself that way, and then the themes that are discussed in each, and how the theme is played out. You might, make a list of 3 or 4 things that you want to talk about in your essay, and then memorize that. Yeah. That's really the only thing you memorize.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's very antithetical to my memory of studying for English tests specifically. I don't remember, apart from memory work, which was its own separate thing, like when we did memory work, that was what we did that day. There was not also a written test. If you're doing a written test, unless it was a grammar-specific test, it wasn't really a thing that you had to study for, except to
You didn't, because you have incredible...
But also I read the
recall.
Tests. I read
Sarah, you have incredible recall. I had to study like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I literally had for every time there was a major test, it would usually be 2 or 3 books or plays or whatever, poems or whatever, 2 or 3 things that you had to bring in. And I had a cheat sheet for each one of them, and I would memorize the things were on it, because otherwise, and I couldn't pull it forward. I know this what happens. What is that character's name? God damn it. I mean, so you don't have to do that because you have great recall, but some people don't. Some of us do have to study, but not facts and dates and the stuff that they're doing in the scene.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying is yes, you would have to refresh. I think usually if we were doing, not an end of semester exam, if we were just doing a test in an English class, it was usually only on 1 work or at most 2. So you might have to refresh the names or whatever, but mostly the test would be writing an essay or writing maybe not a whole essay, but writing about the themes. You don't have to write about
short question, but that's writing. It's asking you to describe a theme or whatever, maybe a paragraph, but it's still essay writing. Yeah.
But anyway,
I know. I completely agree with what you're saying. It's not what they were studying. It's not what you would study. But anyway, the what happens in this scene is so horrifying to me, and yet it is so expected, and there's been so much foreshadowing. They have told her she can't miss the test. Now, they never did say that she couldn't be late. I don't remember him saying that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they oversleep, and there's a series of things that happens. She goes in and checks on her mom who's asleep, and she covers her up, and then later on her mom comes into the kitchen and sees she's asleep at the table, and Lorelai, bless her heart, doesn't make that kid get up and go to her room and set her alarm. Really? What kind of mother are you? You let her. You think it's so cute that she's asleep at the table? Yeah. I'm just gonna leave her there. No, I wouldn't have done that. First of all, how do you fall asleep at a table?
I don't
how do
know.
You fall asleep?
I do not know physically how they fell asleep at that table. And in that moment, it's just all I can do is scream, "Set an alarm, Lorelai!"
Make her go to bed, set an alarm. But of course, if they had, then we wouldn't have the denouement. Is that the right word? At the end. So she doesn't miss the test, but she does have to drive herself. Well, she does miss it. She has to drive herself, first of all, because Lorelai has an appointment.
Yes.
Really?
She has a meeting, I think.
A meeting. But you can't let somebody else handle that while you drive your daughter to school. And if she had driven her to school, she probably would have gotten back in time for the meeting. So they're creating a crisis here. Yeah. So she has to drive herself, and she pulls over at one point because she can't find her notes for something. No, get to school and then look for your damn notes. But she pulls over because they have to create a situation where a deer can run into the car and hit her. That's the title, The Deer Hunters.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a funny situation, but it is. I'm also frustrated with Rory in this scene because
very frustrated.
She knows she's running late, and she stops the car in the middle of the forest, which, like, okay, she's in Connecticut. I've been there. A lot of it does look like that. There's a lot of rural roads.
Yeah, it looks like a set. It looks like a wooded set
to me.
It does, but okay.
I've done a lot of driving in Connecticut, and there are a lot of roads that are like that. I don't think that that's... I mean, she's supposed to be... I think the school is supposed to be pretty close to Hartford, which is a city, so it's definitely pushing it a little bit, but there are a lot of rural roads.
Forestry.
Yeah.
Rural, that's
rural roads surrounded by woods. It's not out of the question, for sure. But then she just stops there and calls Lane in order... because she's missing some of her notes, and she wants to see if she left them there, and I'm just like, Rory, you don't have any more time to study. Why are you doing this? Get to school. What are you gonna do?
As I was watching this, I thought, when she's sitting there and the deer runs into the car, they were trying to find something comparable to the dog ate my paperwork, my homework, something that is so bizarre nobody will believe her.
Yeah.
So that I could see the writer sitting there trying to come up. Well, what if she pulls the car over and a deer runs into it? Nobody will believe that.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Nobody believes her. She gets to school. She's 20 minutes late. Plenty of time to take the test and do well.
Yeah.
But their rule is you can't be late, and I don't understand that.
I don't
That's
understand
a rule I don't
that.
understand.
Also, every school is different. I don't think TJ had this rule. I'm pretty sure. In fact, I remember specifically this one day. I remember because I didn't want to take this test. Maybe we've had too many TJ stories during this episode, but
that's an educational episode.
There was a period of time where I took the metro bus to school, the city bus to school, and they changed the route one day in the middle of winter without announcing it, or at least without announcing it in a way that we knew about it. I used to get on the bus at this very specific spot, and it basically just went down this one road about half an hour, and then I would get off right in front of school, and they changed it so that I would basically... They changed it to essentially two buses. You
had to change it to a transfer station.
Yeah, that bus then went to a transfer station, and there was supposed to be another bus that would go from that transfer station down to the end of the line.
And this happened on a day it snowed.
It snowed.
There was snow on the ground.
It was the first this is, I guess, a pretty comparable situation, because it was another, like, act of God situation.
Yeah.
It was... So they changed the bus route, and it was snowing like crazy. So I get on the bus, no idea that it's gonna go to a different place, and then suddenly it gets on the highway, and I start freaking out. I was like 15 at the time. I think at 14,
it was
15.
8th grade. It was 8th grade,
so 14.
Because you didn't start,
And this bus starts going the wrong way, and then it stops at this transfer station that I've never seen before, and I go up to the front and ask the bus driver what's going on, and she tells me that I have to transfer, and I was like, I didn't know that. How do I even transfer? And she gets mad at me because I think we had paid $125 for the ticket, and a transfer ticket is supposed to be $150. So she gives me a transfer ticket and then says, "You owe me 25 cents."
Yes, I remember. Oh boy. And there's a whole lot more to this story because I ended up I called Metro and yelled at them about this. But anyway,
I get off the bus with my transfer, and it's snowing. It's really cold. Fortunately, I did have an extra pair of pants in my bag, so I end up pulling out this pair of pants and pulling them on.
But what you didn't have was a phone.
Or a watch. What I didn't have was a phone or a watch. So I'm standing outside, it's snowing, I'm basically like on the side of the highway, like there's a transfer station and there is a roof, but there was no way to go inside. They hadn't opened the inside part of the transfer station yet, so I'm literally standing outside. I wait until there's no one around, pull on my pants under my skirt, and then I keep waiting. I have no idea how much time is passing, but she did tell me that the bus I was waiting for would come where that bus had dropped me off, because there were a couple of spots at the station. And she told me what the number was, and so I was waiting for it, and one bus comes, and I think, oh, that's gotta be it. but it's the wrong bus, and then it leaves. Another one comes. I think that's got to be it, but it leaves. Also, she told me that it should be there within the next 15 minutes. Like, I shouldn't have been waiting that long. Finally, at a certain point...
But there was snow on the ground. Everything was late.
Yeah, exactly. It was snowing, and it was snowing a lot. It was snowing, like, the whole time. It was, like, at least 6 inches deep, if not more. But yeah, so at a certain point, I think, man, it has been a long time. I have seen several buses come and go. I really don't know how long it's been because I have no phone and no watch, but it feels like it's been probably at least 45 minutes, which must be too long. So finally I think, okay, it's cold. I've been out here a while. I gotta go do something about this. The nearest building is like a quarter of a mile away. I can see it, but it's over this like huge snow-covered hill. So I have to like trek down this crazy hill in my like skirt and like thin workout pants. And I get down there and
cross a very busy street with no crosswalk.
Yeah, exactly. Cross one of the biggest, busiest streets in St. Louis, no crosswalk, run across it and get into an office building that's across the street. And I asked them if I can use their phone. They were very nice and they said yes. And then I look at the phone and the phone has the time on it. I had been out there for 2.5 hours. And I had no idea.
It was a horrible situation, but you survived it, and you didn't have to take the test that morning.
No, I did. That's the thing is. Then
you took
I got
it later
there,
in the day.
No, I was about 15 minutes late for the test, and he just made me take it. I just had to take it right there. That's the point of the story is I still had to take the stupid math test that was happening.
Well, so getting back to Rory and Lorelai.
Yes.
We've had foreshadowing in several scenes that she was going to miss this test. We knew it was going to happen. I think I knew it as soon as the teacher said there would be no makeups in that very early scene. Mm-hmm. But the best thing about missing this test, and I realize I'm getting ahead a little bit, but in this scene where he will not let her take the test because she's 15-20 minutes late. I don't know if the headmaster doesn't walk in at that point. It's just the teacher, right?
It's just the teacher,
Okay, so the teacher's telling her, he said it's the rules. You know what the rules are. And this is the first time we've heard this rule. We knew there would be no makeups, but I don't remember them saying anything about her being late. So anyway, so he's telling her this, and she's yelling. Mm-hmm. She is yelling at the teacher. She's yelling back at the teacher. Mm-hmm. And then Paris makes a snickering comment. I don't even remember what it was. But she yells at Paris. Yep. And it takes her down a peg perfectly. Yeah. And then yells at Tristan, takes him down a peg too. And I have such great admiration for her in this scene. Yeah. She has found her voice. She may have missed the test, and there are going to be consequences for that. But it was a big catharsis when she yells at Paris and Tristan. Yeah. Even if she did have to miss the test to do it, she grew a pair. She found her voice, and I was so proud of her in this scene. But then, well, do you have a comment about this before we go to the last scene?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty much the same way. It's she's finally at the end of her rope. Like, it's finally too much for her, and she goes
this
off.
Calm person, and we were talking earlier about how calm and steady she is. Yes. Nothing ruffles her feathers. And this did.
Part of the reason that Lorelai hadn't realized that anything was wrong is because she's been so stoic about it.
She kept it close to her chest, yeah. And plus Rory is not somebody who likes to break the rules. She's a rule follower. Mm-hmm. Her mother is not. Her mother is a rule breaker. Yeah. But Rory is a rule follower, and yet she feels this rule is incredibly unfair. And it is. It is. It's very unfair. It's a rule that makes no sense. Yeah. And in fact, and I'm getting a little bit ahead here, but the headmaster says to her, yes, and the dog ate your homework. Yeah. I'm sorry, you asshole. But you need to listen to this story. And even if you can't let the rule slide for this situation, you should at least acknowledge that the situation happened and be a little bit kinder. Yeah. You can say, I understand this happened. I unfortunately cannot do anything about it because these are our rules. We would have to go to our board or whatever and change these rules. These are the rules, and in a school, if it's not life-threatening, you have to follow the rules. If he said this in a more humane manner to her, I think it would have been a little bit easier for everybody to swallow, for both her and her mother, who shows up and is in this scene, and she starts yelling at the headmaster. What does she call him? Oh, El Duce.
El Duce, yeah.
So anyway, it's just horrible. But anyway, You go ahead and take it away.
I mean, yeah, I feel the same way about it. I feel like, I think from Headmaster Chilton's point of view that, and this is kind of the ethos of the whole school, he thinks that having these, unbending rules is just the best way to make sure that only the best and brightest succeed at Chilton. And we keep coming back to how class works in this show, and Rory and her mother are actually relatively quite privileged compared to your actual average American, but I do think that this is kind of an interesting example of, like, to an extent, this was not Rory's fault, and this is unfair. I mean, it is true that her car was hit by a deer, which is something that she could not have foreseen. I will say I think we're supposed to take that it's not her fault. From my perspective, it's annoying that she stopped that long to talk to Lane.
Oh, yeah.
And
they make mistakes over and over again. To create this.
She gets out of the car and chases the deer down. And I know that's because she's, she cares. It's because she's empathetic and she's worried that the deer hurt itself. But it's also like, girl, you got to get to that test.
And why did she pull over to begin with? Why didn't she set her alarm?
Yeah.
There are all kinds of, they made mistake after mistake after mistake because I think they were used to, when she was in public school, flouting the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a lot more flexibility when all you had to do is get up in the morning, throw some clothes on, and walk down the street to the school.
Yeah.
But when you're going to a school that you have to take a half-an-hour bus to get to, and there are strict rules, you have to have more structure in your life, which is something that Rory really would not have a problem with because it's her nature to be structured, but her mother is not like that.
Yeah.
And she's a huge influence on her. And I think this part of the transition for Rory into recognizing that as much as she loves her mother, you still have to have structure. And the funny thing is that when Lorelai goes to work, she has structure, she has rules they have to follow, and she won't let them break the rules. But for some reason, when it comes to Chilton, she thinks they should break the rules for Rory.
Yeah.
When she knows in her heart that she and Rory made lots of mistakes to get to this point.
For sure.
So that's a problem. But it's the headmaster's attitude that is so demoralizing and aggravating.
For sure. But I also think that there's something to be said for the fact that, like, if your rules are uniform for everybody, then they're actually going to be harder for some people than for others based on, like, the simple fact of life. I mean, for instance, if your rule is it costs $100,000 to go to this school every year, and that's the same rule as it is for everybody, so it's fair. That's not fair. Not everyone can afford that. Some people can afford that easily, and some people will never be able to afford that. So making a uniform rule and applying it uniformly to everyone does mean that it's not going to be fair to some people. And in this instance, the fact that Rory lives much farther away and doesn't have access to, like, say, more than one car or whatever, that in itself means that she is at a disadvantage. Again, I think they made mistakes, but I think part of what's happening here is Chilton is an elite school and they have rules that do not bend for anyone, and the truth of the matter is when your rules don't bend for anyone, that means they're going to be unfair to some people.
Somebody.
Yeah.
And there's also a power situation going on here too. The headmaster knows he has the power to make this decision and chooses not to.
Yes.
Chooses not to make an exception. He says, we're not here to be fair. We're here to educate. And then he dismisses her and opens the door and says, that will be all. Mm-hmm. Like she's in the military and she's a private and he's a general. Mm-hmm. Excuse me? So he's definitely got a seat of power here that he is wielding over these two women, and that pisses me off. I mean, the whole that whole scene is just really hard for me to watch because, well, I mean, I do think that scene in the classroom was great because she does find her voice. But the way they talk to Lorelai, at least the way the headmaster talks to her, is uncalled for. Yeah. And if it were me, I'd be ready to give up too. Yeah. And she is ready to give up. But Rory is not ready to give up.
Yeah, and so then, just want to quickly mention it so that we mention it. We do get a quick cutaway to Suki showing up at the critic's house. Yeah. And am I right in saying that we never see the critic's face?
Never see his face. Yeah. And that's deliberate because she doesn't want to see his face.
Yes.
She wants to. She doesn't want, because if she ever has to, as a chef, She wants to make sure that his reviews are always of her work.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want how to what's
she
a
doesn't
good
want
way
to
to
give him
describe
special
this?
treatment.
Special treatment. She doesn't be tempted to give him special treatment if she sees him come in.
Yeah.
So she's being very fair. We don't even see what happens if he likes it or not.
We don't. Yeah.
Which is kind of frustrating.
But she shows up with the risotto
and
the
the wine. The correct wine to be paired with the risotto.
Yes. And then she also,
but she doesn't. Passes it behind her, so she doesn't see his face.
So she doesn't see him. Yeah. She explains who she is, and he's confused because he gave her a good review. But she asks him to try it anyway, and then she insults his cooking because apparently she can smell.
It's too salty. I can smell it.
Smell that it's too salty, which makes me think that it must be very salty indeed if she can smell it.
Or she just has an extra sensitive nose, but
a magic nose. But yeah, so anyway, that's kind of our wrap up for Suki's storyline, and then we get back to Rory and Lorelai, and this is when we get the conversation of Lorelai, and this kind of goes back to how Lorelai is a different parent than a lot of these other parents. She is a little bit worried that this D is an indication that maybe Rory isn't right for Chilton, and maybe basically Lorelai is a little bit worried that she has actually projected her own dreams onto Rory, and that it's not really what Rory wants.
And actually, there's an early in the episode, and I can't remember where it is, but she talks about, meets with the teacher, where she talks about at the parent-teacher meeting, how when she was 4, I used to talk to her about Harvard.
Yes.
So she says that. At that point, I thought, was Harvard your idea or her idea? So I don't know if we ever come back to this, but at the end of the episode, she is speaking that out loud. Was it my idea? Was it your idea? Is this really something you want? And they always come back to Harvard rather than Chilton, because it's the longer goal is to go to Harvard.
Yeah.
But then who was it? Was it the first time we meet the headmaster in either the first or second episode where he asks her why she wants to go to Harvard, and he asks her what she wants to do after Harvard, and she says, I want to be a journalist. I want to travel the world and be a journalist and write about things.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the goal.
Yeah.
She wants to have a life that is the one she has in her mind of being a writer and traveling the world, being a journalist. Harvard is a stepping stone to get there, and yet they often treat it like it's the goal.
Yeah.
And then maybe later, I think later on in the series, she realizes that, and they change that a little bit. But at this point, it's still the goal, but they have a conversation about whether she should quit.
Yes.
And she says no. I am not quitting.
Yeah, Rory is still committed. Also, what happens in this scene is they're driving home from school, and Rory has Lorelai pull over at the spot where the deer ran into her.
The deer ran into her. They show it for the first time. Oh, no, that's later. They show it later. But she also says,
get out of the
you don't
car.
think I can do it.
Yeah.
She says, before they get out of the car, she says, are you saying I should quit? You don't think I should do it.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that it was the best thing Lorelai could have said to a truly competitive person is, do you want to quit? Yeah. I just want to make that point. I think she handles that right, even though you can see on her face she's not really sure she's handling it right.
Yeah.
But she does handle it right. So anyway, they pull over the car and they look for the deer.
And I think this is actually why the episode is called The Deer Hunters, because they're literally the two of them hunting for the deer in this scene. They're
hunting for the deer. I wonder if they had something else in mind too, though, because Rory's a bit of a deer herself, deer in the headlights kind of thing.
A little bit.
So I think there's that imagery going on there too. But it's definitely every I say this about every episode, but every episode seems to be a step in her growth.
Yeah, for sure.
To who she's becoming as an adult.
Yeah.
And in this episode, that involves finding a dead deer, which they never find. We think he's still alive, he or she.
I don't think it died because it kept running after.
It kept running.
It might have a concussion.
It did some damage to that door.
Yeah, for sure. But it kept running, and they don't find it again. Have you seen The Deer Hunter? I have not.
I have, but it's been 50 years. I mean, I saw it when it first came out, and the Deer Hunter is a movie about Vietnam vets.
Yeah.
Vietnam and Vietnam veterans and how they hunt deer and hunt humans, and there's the whole. I couldn't really tell you what the exact thing. It's an anti-war film for sure, but I couldn't tell you what the exact themes were. Other than that, Robert De Niro's in it, and with Christopher Walken in his first major film role, fell in love with him. He was so so good. And maybe we should go back and watch The Deer Hunter at some point.
Yeah.
And see if it relates to this.
See if it relates to this episode about school tests.
Because they really, Rory and Lorelai really are into movies and music and culture and stuff. Yeah. So there's probably a real specific, but the basic reference is that they're hunting this deer who hit her and is probably alive. It's almost like a MacGuffin.
It is a little bit, and I think it's also, like I said earlier, Rory gets out of the car to look for it because she's genuinely concerned about the deer, even though it kind of messed up her day. And I think in this last scene, Lorelai just gets out unquestioningly to help her look for it. Because that's what she's going to do. And then they just
walk in circles and talk. And the circles never end.
Yep.
They never find the deer. But there is one final thing that happens. Do you want to describe it?
Yeah, so then they get home and Max Medina calls and leaves a message on, listeners, there used to be this thing. There used to be this thing
called an answering
machine where you could leave a message, and sometimes if you were actually there when someone was leaving a message for you on your answering machine, it would play while you were in the room.
It would always, not sometimes, but that was the nature of answering machines. So you could tell who it was.
Yeah.
Because not everybody had caller ID at this point.
Yes.
So sometimes the only way you would know who was calling is if you listened to. And that's why a lot of times in movies from earlier eras, you hear people say, pick up.
Yeah.
They want you to...
Yeah, it used to be a way of screening your calls. You could listen to a little bit of the message and pick it up if you wanted to talk to them. So they get home, and Max Medina, the teacher, is leaving them a message saying that Rory can do some extra credit to make up for the test, and also telling Lorelai that it was delightful to encounter her. I think those are the words he uses.
So, the extra credit offer.
Yes, the extra credit
offer. In his message, he says that Il Duce and he have discussed it. And she can do some extra credit to make up for some of the she's got the D on the first thing. And then this test was going to be 20% of her grade. And they don't say if that's a semester grade or the year grade. It's still a significant amount.
Yeah.
So my feeling is, even though the headmaster acted like an absolute asshole, the confrontation with Lorelai must have got him to thinking, affected him in a way that it made him think.
Yeah.
And he consented to allow the teacher to offer her extra credit to make up the grade.
Yeah, I think it's also possible that he wanted to, talk a tough talk, but maybe still does just want Rory to succeed. And this is part of my issue with this rule, is that my feeling is the reason you have rules like that is because you want people to be serious about what's happening. And the way that Rory and Lorelai acted, even though they were late, proved that they were serious about this test and this school and Rory's academic future. So my feeling is that though they failed by the letter of the law, by the spirit of the law, they succeeded. The point of these rules is be serious about this, show up on time, be respectful. They are serious and respectful about this. They just didn't manage to show up on time. But sometimes one thing can be true without the other thing being true.
Well, and it's a learning experience for them both. They'll never not set an alarm again.
Yes.
Lorelai will learn to respect. And this was a big turning point for her, because she realizes this school is serious. Yeah. And I've got to support my daughter and let her be the serious person she is and needs to be for the requirements at this school. No more, can we go out and get ice cream at 11 o'clock when she's studying? So she wakes up. It's a wake-up call for her.
Yeah.
And it was a reaffirmation, I think, for Rory, who realizes, this is good for me. I want to be here. I want to do this. I can do this.
Yeah.
I have to get used to a few things, but I am just as good as these other kids. I deserve to be here. I'm smart, and I can make this happen and make it work. And she does.
Yeah.
There may be other issues like this, but none as serious as this one.
I think also, and, I don't think we have enough evidence for this one way or the other, but I feel like maybe part of what's happening is, and we do already know that Rory was kind of a star at her old high school.
The smart girl.
And I think that extended to the rest of the town. I think the whole town is a little bit, Rory and Lorelai are kind of stars in the town of Stars Hollow.
Stars Hollow.
And I think maybe the town has made a lot of allowances for them in the past. I don't have a ton of evidence
Luke
for that yet,
has.
but yeah, exactly. Like the whole town, to a certain extent, kind of revolves around them, and
They've adopted them. They
Yes.
adopted them, and the two of them became their family.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is their chosen family, the townspeople.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. When it's your family, you make allowances for them. But in the real world, in the corporate world, in any kind of job that you go to, and this is what I was thinking when they were having this conversation with the headmaster, is that when you go to work, your boss is going to talk to you like this. Your boss is going to want you to be on time.
Yep.
And if you miss an important meeting, which Lorelai wouldn't give up to get her daughter to school on time, when you miss an important meeting, you could get fired. So all of this is part of the education. And I also, to the headmaster's credit, I think he realizes that these two have to get with the program. They're a little too flouncy. I mean, they need to be. I mean, Rory isn't by nature, but by training she is, because she's done what her mother has done. But now she really needs to get with it and keep moving. And I just have one final thought on this: the grandparents do not appear in this episode.
Very true. And that brings us to the end of the episode. So that's your final thought?
That's my final thought.
All right. Yeah, I guess.
Although I did want to look up the actor who played Max Medina, because he's a character actor that I've seen in a lot of things, but I can't get IMDb to open for me. So he just has these I want to say starring character roles over the years. Here he's very young, but I've seen him in other shows in the last 20 or 25 years, and he's been around a lot. I can't think of what his name is, but anyway.
Well, he's going to continue to be in the show for a while, so we can talk about him.
We can talk about next week. Okay. Or in 2 weeks, rather.
Yeah.
Okay. That, dear listeners, is all for today.
Exactly. I'm Tessa Dare. You can find me at my website, tessadare.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at author.tess.adair, or on Twitter at author_Tess_Adair, all one word, and that's TESSADAIR. And
what Tess keeps forgetting to tell you guys is that you can sign up for her email list.
Oh, yes.
At tessadare.com.
Yes.
And I'm Beth. You can find me on Instagram at STL_writer_Beth, BETH. This has been Where You Lead, our brilliant and fun new podcast about the Gilmore Girls from the perspective of a mother and daughter. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll tune in for our next episode in 2 weeks. See you then.
All right.